Hello everybody, it's Kelly here. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time, welcome back if you've been before. Lovely to have you either way. On this channel we talk books. Today I am recording on my very last day, my last hours of my trip down the south coast of the state that I live in. I am recording a holiday haul, so I have been doing some book shopping and I've got some stuff to show you. So let's just dive straight in. So if you have watched my previous video about the South Coast Readers and Writers Festival, you will know that's the reason I am currently down the South Coast. So I bought some books while I was there, so I thought we'll start there. Now, I'm not going to speak too much about these, basically just show them to you and tell you a tiny little bit about them. Because I've already spoken about these books on that video. So the first one is The Nightmare Sequence by Omar and Safdar Ahmed, with an introduction by George Abraham. Omar is a poet whose work I have been following, and this is a book that came out this year, and it is about the situation that's happening right now in Palestine, and it's a poetic, I guess, response to that situation. More poetry. This is We Speak of Flowers by Eileen Chong. This is a poet who spoke at the festival and who I picked up the book to have a look, and I was like, yes, absolutely, this is definitely the kind of thing I like. This is a single poem, but it's in 101 parts, and it's a response to her grandparent passing away, and it was during COVID. The grandparent was in Singapore, they were in Australia, they couldn't go across to do the sort of like family rituals and things like that. So this was sort of like how she responded to that situation, and there's just some really beautiful poetry in there. And finally, in terms of the poetry, we have The Drop-Off by David Stavanger. He also spoke at the festival, and I really enjoyed his sort of like sense of humour and also his very deep thought about things. And this poetry collection is based around, so he and his partner, they had a son together, and when I think the son was about 3 years old, they split. So this is sort of like about co-parenting, but like in a sort of positive way, but just some reflections on co-parenting in a poetic form. And I loved hearing the poems that he read and hearing him speak. So also it was actually the very first session of the festival. I heard Dr. Deborah Dank and Nardi Simpson speak. They're two Aboriginal writers, and I already owned books of theirs, but I picked up their most recent ones as well. This one is Terraglossia by Dr. Deborah Dank, and this is a non-fiction, and it is about it's reflections on language, I guess, and talking about the impact of English on Aboriginal culture, but also on Aboriginal languages, etc. There's reflections in here about those kinds of things. And Nardi Simpson wrote The Belburd, and this is fiction, and it is all about an Aboriginal poet and her kind of making sense of her place in the world, and I'm looking forward to reading all of those things. The last one I picked up at the festival itself is Wait Here by Lucy Nelson. This is a short story collection, and it is all of the stories are based around women who do not have children. So that is kind of the theme the thread of the short stories that kind of pulls them all together. So I'm looking forward to reading that one as well. Now, almost all the rest of the books that I have to show you are secondhand, because this is what I love to do when I come on holidays, is I find secondhand gems in shops I don't always get to go to. But I did buy one other new book from the bookstore in Kiama, and that is Shy Creatures by Claire Chambers. This is one that had been on my wish list for some time, and I do try when I go into independent book shops to pick up books that I've been kind of meaning to get. I try not to just buy random new things when I'm buying new books. So this is one that I already have my eye on. So on the back it says, "It all started the weekend the hidden man came to Westbury Park. Croydon, 1964. Art therapist Helen Hansford is working in a psychiatric hospital where she has been having a passionate but precarious affair with her married colleague, the charismatic Dr. Gil Rudden. Helen and Gil's lives are upended when William Tapping, a silent 37-year-old man with a beard down to his waist, arrives at the hospital. As Helen helps William express himself through art, she becomes increasingly entangled in his mysterious past. Inspired by a true story, Shy Creatures is a life-affirming exploration of loneliness, love, and the quiet forces that shape our lives, reminding us that freedom can come in unexpected forms." Claire Chambers wrote a book called Small Pleasures that was doing the rounds a couple of years ago. It was nominated for a prize, I think the Women's Prize maybe in the UK. I haven't read Small Pleasures, it's on my TBR, but I now have this one as well, so hopefully I'll be able to get to that one very soon. Okay, let's move on to the second-hand portion of this video. I'm going to try and be real snappy with this because sometimes I can waffle. Okay, so I'm going to start with some classics that I picked up. When I talk about classics, when I'm hauling classics, I generally don't give you the synopsis because often we know already about these classics. I'm just showing you my good finds. So I picked up a copy of Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This is a vintage classics edition, and it's in pretty decent condition, so I was happy to find that for a couple of dollars. This one is in not as good condition. This is Beloved by Toni Morrison, also the vintage editions, and this one's a little bit more battered. However, it's a reading guide edition, which I don't really... so it's at the end, it has some like extra biographical details, some questions for discussion, so there's questions for in-depth discussion and general discussion, further reading and related works, and talking about setting up a reading group, which I think is interesting. I didn't know that was a thing that Vintage were doing. So anyway, that was exciting to find. This is a really beautiful edition of Nancy Mitford's The Pursuit of Love. I just really loved the cover of this one, so I was very happy to pick this one up. And yet another copy of The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. I haven't read this one yet, but this is such a nice edition. This is a vintage classics. It's got the French flaps with a really beautiful end paper as well. So I kind of had to, it just had to be done. It just had to be done. What are you going to do? Okay, so that is the classics of this haul. Moving on now to just some general fiction. Actually, we'll start with a children's fiction. I picked this one up called A Girl Called Corpse by Reece Carter. I've seen this one going around. I haven't heard anybody talk about it, so I don't know much about it, but it just seemed interesting. On the back it says, "An unexpected message, a surprising quest, and danger at every turn, but Corpse is not afraid. She'll stop at nothing to uncover the truth about her past." With a body made of wax, seaweed for hair, and polished abalone shells for eyes, Corpse is bound to haunt the witch's sea shack forever. She has no memory of the kid she was before she was snatched and ended up on the rock that doesn't exist. But the delivery of an unexpected message sets Corpse off on a surprising quest, searching for answers to the old and familiar questions that have filled her not brain since the day she first woke up a ghost. Questions about her name, questions about her family. With only her 8-legged friend Simon for company, Corpse heads into the unknown. There will be danger, cruel witches, a silver-eyed sea monster, and a cunning merchant with a hungry grin. But Corpse is not afraid. She'll stop at nothing to uncover the truth about her past. Only some answers, it turns out, are much closer than she thinks. So maybe a good one for spooky season. We'll see. Okay, now the general fiction for adults. I picked up a copy of My Name is Lucy Barton by Elizabeth Strout. Obviously Elizabeth Strout has been around for some time. Is this the first one in the series? I think it might be. It's 2016. Yeah, so it's got My Name is Lucy Barton, The Burgess Boys, Olive Kitteridge, Abide With Me, Amy and Isabel at this point. This is a Viking edition. And I don't really know that much about it. I just know that this is a beloved series by many people. So it says, a mother comes to visit her daughter in hospital after having not seen her in many years. Her unexpected visit forces Lucy to confront her past, uncovering long-buried memories of a profoundly impoverished childhood and her present as the facade of her new life in New York begins to crumble, awakening her to the reality of her faltering marriage and her unsteady journey towards becoming a writer. From Lucy's hospital bed, we are drawn ever more deeply into the emotional complexity of family life, the inescapable power of the past, and the memories, however painful, that bind a family together. My Name is Lucy Barton is a tender expression of the meaning of familial love from one of America's finest writers. I am going to need to move because the sun has shifted and it is now in my eyeballs. So bear with me for a moment while I just slightly adjust my position. Okay, I may need to move again. Hopefully not though. So the next book that I picked up is Tress of the Emerald Sea, a Cosmere novel by Brandon Sanderson. I have never read Brandon Sanderson, although I know he is a beloved fantasy writer. I'm not, I do read fantasy, but I don't read it a lot. So I just haven't ever, I've just never picked up a Brandon Sanderson before. But I know this one came out quite recently. And although it's a Cosmere novel, I have a feeling that it is a little bit standalone-y. Like it's not super, like if I haven't read any other ones, I think this one's okay to read. It came out in 2023. So it says, the only life Tress has known on her island home in an emerald green ocean has been a simple one, with the simple pleasures of collecting cups brought by sailors from faraway lands and listening to stories told by her friend Charlie. But when his father takes him on a voyage to find a bride and disaster strikes, Tress must stow away on a ship and seek the sorceress of the deadly midnight sea. Amid the spore oceans where pirates abound, can Tress leave her simple life behind and make her own place, sailing a sea where a single drop of water can mean instant death? So that's Tress of the Emerald Sea. It's moving. It's moving. Okay. This one is Parasol Against the Axe by Helen Oyeyemi. I have heard of her before, and I think when I looked at the other books that she's written, I think maybe the one I have heard of is What Is Not Yours Is Not Yours. But I've never read anything from her before. However, because I obviously got attracted to the very colourful spine and cover, but then I read the first little bit and I just really enjoyed the writing style. So I'm going to read that to you. So this is the first sort of little paragraph of the book. At some point, who knows how, I found myself a member of a WhatsApp group that seemed to have been set up as a safe space for sharing complaints about the capital city of Czechia. I'm not 100% sure I've said that correctly. A couple of messages written by people who just wanted to say I had a nice time there were answered with polite but firm reminders that there was a different group for people who had a nice time in Prague, and that group should be sought out independently. Okay then. I just thought that was quite an amusing style. So that's why I picked this one up. And I think that is basically what this is about. But on the back it says, now, if Hero Tojosoa was an axe, then Dorothea Gilmartin was a parasol. Really, both were both, of course. But you try telling them that. Which is a very interesting... intriguing call to the book. And on the inside cover it says, Oyeyemi treats you to a kaleidoscopic weekend in Prague, as dazzling as it is effortlessly unique. Get lost in a story like you would an unfamiliar city, and let it reward you with moments of philosophical clarity, wheelbarrow rides, raw emotion, and raw onions. Sure. I'm in. I picked up a copy of The Beauties by Lauren Chater. I have read The Lace Weaver by this author and I really enjoyed it. And this is her most recent book that came out, I'm going to say last year? Yeah, 2024. So I'm very excited to have this. This was on my wish list also, and it's always exciting when you find a wish list book secondhand. It says, an incomparable beauty, a promise to a king, a portrait that can never be completed. When Amelia Lennox loses everything after her husband's lands and title are confiscated, her beauty is her best bargaining chip with the only man who can restore their fortunes, King Charles II himself. But the king's favour comes at a price. He will pardon Amelia's husband only if she agrees to be his mistress. Torn, Amelia comes up with a condition of her own. She will consent, but not until her portrait hangs among the famed Windsor Beauties, a series commissioned by the Duchess of York to showcase the fairest women in the royal retinue. For Henry Greenhill, ambitious assistant to the court painter, the opportunity to paint Amelia's portrait is a chance to step out of his master's shadow, but his sitter proves as evasive as she is beautiful, and with barely a sketch to show for his efforts, Henry's career is on the line. As the king's patience wears thin, it's clear that more than creative talent will be needed to capture this incomparable beauty on canvas. So, sounds very interesting, and I'm excited to get to it at some point. I had already pre-purchased these two next books, so these are technically just pick-up books, and a couple of the ones I've already shown you I also bought at this same shop. This is from Anne's secondhand bookshop in Nowra, and if you are ever in the area, always drop in and have a look at what they've got, because it's one of those like amazing bookshops that have like up to the ceiling kind of organized chaos, you know, like that kind of thing. And I love browsing in there whenever I'm in town. But also I follow them on social media, and the owner of the store will put up new additions to the store. Like he has like a little section, and you can send him a message and you can pay for them online, and he puts them aside and you can just go pick them up when you're ready. Anyway, I picked up Funny Story by Emily Henry. So this one, I have read Book Lovers by this author and I loved it. So I do want to, at some point, attempt to read some of her other work. So on this one, it says, Daphne always loved the way Peter told their story. That is, until it became the prologue to his actual love story with his childhood bestie, Petra, which is how Daphne ends up rooming with her total opposite and the only person who could possibly understand her predicament, Petra's ex, Miles. As expected, it's not a match made in heaven. That is, until one night, while tossing back tequilas, they form a plan. And if it involves posting deliberately misleading photos of their adventures together, well, who could blame them? But it's all just for show, of course, because there's no way Daphne would actually start her new chapter by falling in love with her ex-fiance's new fiance's ex, right? So, sounds like fun. And I also picked up Juice by Tim Winton. This book was nominated for not the Stella Prize, this is a man, the Miles Franklin long list. It didn't make it to the short list, but I was looking for copies of some of the books, and I found this one secondhand, and it's in really great condition, a hardback as well. So yeah, I'm excited to have found this one for much cheaper than buying it brand new. So on the back it says, we kept memory alive, ensured it still meant something, so that what had happened before our time would not be forgotten, and we were relentless. Two fugitives, a man and a child, drive all night across a stony desert. As dawn breaks, they roll into an abandoned mine site. From the vehicle they survey a forsaken place. Middens of twisted iron, rusty wires, piles of sun-baked trash. They're exhausted, traumatized, desperate now, but as a refuge, this is the most promising place they've seen. The child peers at the field of desolation. The man thinks to himself, this could work. Problem is, they're not alone. So begins a searing, propulsive journey through a life whose central challenge is not simply a matter of survival, but of how to maintain human decency as everyone around you falls even further into barbarism. So that's Juice by Tim Winton. I think it's quite a departure from his normal fare. All right, I'm going to need to speed through because I'm about to get a call, an appointment call. Okay, I've got 4 more books to show you. They are all non-fiction. We have the DK Handbook's Stars and Planets, which is just a non-fiction little guide to the universe, I guess. Alice Pung's Unpolished Gems, which is a memoir about her time growing up in Footscray in Melbourne, in Australia, and her family is Chinese Cambodian, and so it's sort of talking about her adventures as a person of colour growing up in Australia. I found a copy of The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop, and I am unsurprisingly a massive Gilmore Girls girly, so I'm excited to have this memoir to read. And just to finish it all off, Dolly Parton, Behind the Seams, My Life in Rhinestones. This is like a coffee table book of like all of her amazing like outfits. Exciting. Okay, I'm going to sign off here. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I haven't missed my call. No, but it's going to be coming any moment now. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the next one.